Oh my goodness, we have so many folks represented. Thank you guys so much for joining. I love to see the chat going and going and going. Cleveland, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Jersey, Tennessee, Ohio, Colorado, Wisconsin. Oh my goodness, you guys are so needed this year and every year. So thank you for being part of this. Mary from Buffalo, Chicago. Hi, 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 hi. Thank you guys so much for being here. So let's get started. We have a great webinar planned for you guys that will be very informative. Hopefully, it'll answer all of your questions about the Civic Holidays, but most importantly, it'll give you an opportunity to ask questions, but also to hear from some of our partners that do this work. So let's get right into it. My name is Cheyenne. I'm the campaign director for National Voter Registration Day, which of course we know is coming up soon. It's the kickoff, and you will hear about all of the civic holidays, how we work together, but more importantly, you'll again be able to ask questions about the days and how you can participate and get activated. So, what we plan to do is go over today to make sure that you can build the most impactful and engaging in-person celebrations throughout the Civic Holiday season. It is a big year. It's personal, and face-to-face conversations with people can be the most mobilizing ways to get voters to the polls. So we can plan to go over in this webinar everything that you need to get started on planning some in-person events for all of the civic holidays. So we will run through everything from what the civic holidays are to what the resources and more upcoming trainings we have available. Each civic holiday builds on the last. So we start off with National Voter Registration Day, as you know, and we hand it off to National Voter Education Week, I should say, then Vote Early Day, and then Election Hero Day. Civic holidays are nonpartisan days of action that strengthen and celebrate our country's democracy. Each holiday accounts for a different phase of democratic participation, from registering to vote, to making a plan to vote, to casting a ballot, and thanking the community members who make elections possible. Each one complements and builds off of the other, and the civic holidays celebrate the entire voting experience. So your involvement, what does joining the Civic Holidays mean? The Civic Holidays are partner driven, so we absolutely count on you guys to be part of the day and to help us mobilize the voters and be a trusted voice. So just celebrating the Civic Holidays is like the first step, but it is also more than enough. So thank you for acknowledging it, and thank you for being here. And thank you, Ro, for dropping in our website. We've made it super easy for you guys to sign up for all of the civic holidays in one fell swoop and try to simplify and streamline all of those details. When you are involved in the civic holidays, you're involved in a national movement. It is the largest days behind Election Day, and it is what folks remember when the civic season comes around. And you can celebrate how you like, from sending emails to hosting big concerts and other events. We count on you to identify your strengths and to lean into them so that you can participate as you can. So now let's talk about National Voter Registration Day. To kick it off, Tuesday, September 17th, we'll be celebrating. We're so excited. Obviously, we have a big federal election this year, and it means a ton for all of the civic holidays. So we kick it off with voter registration, which is a nonpartisan celebration of democracy. We coordinate with partners from all spectrums that can bring their strengths to this day. And it's really just kind of a day of excitement and engagement. We have partner activations happening from across the country, and it's all designed around encouraging and promoting voter registration. Since 2012, we registered about 5 million plus Americans. So we are so excited that this year means more Americans are coming on to the voter rolls, and also many are updating their voter registration as well. So join us on September 17th and become a partner through the Civic Holidays website. So now we'll talk about Voter Education Week because after registration, we jump right into education. So National Voter Education Week is an open source, nonpartisan voter education campaign. It's held the first week of October, so October 7th through 11th, and it equips voters with the tools, information, and confidence that they need to cast their ballots. So education is super important, especially in a year like this. As we know, there's so many changes to voter education laws, but then also actually how to register to vote and cast the ballot is really important. Many voters need just the reminder of it. So it's a great week to take all of those resources and promote them heavily throughout your networks. Then we handed off to Vote Early Day, which is October 29th. Vote Early Day is a nonpartisan movement of media companies, businesses, nonprofits, election administrators, and creatives. And we're all working together to make sure that Americans have the tools they need to vote early. So it is a wonderful day to push vote early opportunities, whether that be by mail or whatever the state allows. But it's a great day to draw attention to this opportunity for Americans to not forget to vote on election day, and they can vote in advance. So Vote Early Day, October 29th. And then the last of the civic holidays, but certainly not least, is Election Hero Day, where we get a great opportunity to celebrate our poll workers. So November 4th, it is a nonpartisan National Day of Recognition. It falls on Election Day, where we bring together nonprofits, business leaders, brands, public officials, and more to create a communications echo chamber that celebrates the tremendous contributions of election officials, their staff, and poll workers are making sure to ensure a safe, secure voting experience for all. So it's a wonderful day to just celebrate and thank our election heroes for doing this tremendous work on Election Day. And again, if you'd like to sign up for all of the civic holidays, the link is in the chat that Rohini just shared. Thank you so much. And you can sign up for all the civic holidays at once. Awesome. So each civic holiday builds on the last. Just as a reminder, we will be handing off on September 17th and on, passing the torch, and we're so excited for you guys to participate. And now we are really enthused because we're going to hear from our partners, a few of the partners that have participated in the holiday. So we have first up the Council of Native Hawaiian Advancement. Madeline is going to talk to you guys for a few minutes about the work that they did in hosting events, and then we'll hear from Civic Tennessee. So I'll hand it to you, Madeline.
Hi, mahalo. Aloha mai kako. Hi, everyone. So today I wanted to talk to you about some of the work Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement does in conjunction with a group called Our Kaia'ulu Votes, or Our Community Votes. This is in conjunction with us, the Office of Native Hawaiian Affairs, which is one of our quasi-state agencies directly for the beneficiaries of Native Hawaiians, as well as Kamehameha Schools, which is one of the largest schools specifically for Native Hawaiians. And what this group does is making sure Hawaiians are the ones leading the conversation for the state. Because we have the benefit of working with Kamehameha Schools, one of the biggest events that we put on every election cycle is called Walk to the Box. We are really happy that we are, as a state, get to do mail-in voting, which is very beneficial for us in terms of our geography, but also, as I'm sure many of us know, very beneficial for flexibility purposes. It's not just a one election day, go to the polls. It is 2 weeks where people get to go and submit their vote. And so what we do is we try to make voting a full event by getting everybody together, and specifically getting together students, their families, first-time voters, and having a celebration day and then walking our ballots to the box. So we are hosting it this actually upcoming Friday, which is going to be the day before our primaries, at 3 separate locations on 3 different islands. And all of these locations were chosen kind of due to their importance to Native Hawaiians. So here on Oahu, we'll be at Iolani Hale, which is the palace of our former queen. We are going to be sign waving, and then we are going to be waving to everybody on the street, telling everybody how important it is to vote, how proud we are to vote, and how excited we are to be civically engaged, especially for our youth and especially for our students. And then everybody is going to make sure that we can get our ballots in and all walk together. And so that is one of the events we are most excited for. I know 2 years ago when we had it, my cousins all went, and there's pictures of them saved in my company's Google Drive that I get to use and embarrass them. And so that is one of the events that we are most proud of. And when it comes to civic engagement, is making voting something that we are proud of, making voting something that we know historically has been something we Native Hawaiians as a whole have been a huge proponent of, and getting the whole family in while keeping it very nonpartisan and keeping it all about civic engagement. And so that is one of the things that we do, is a walk to the box event for all schools on multiple days, and for both the primary and the general.
Fantastic, Madeline. Thank you so much and for sharing that. We may have some questions for you during the webinar, so we will flag those to you as I know you have to drop early. Thank you so much. And now we'll pass it to Stephen. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining. Tell us about your participation through Civic Tennessee.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Adelson. I use they, he pronouns. I'm the program director at Civic Tennessee. We are Tennessee's statewide civic and voter engagement table and coalition. We have over 40 partners across the state that truly represent Tennessee's electorate. And that's what we're really proud about. That we've built over the past few years. Today is also the first day that you can request an absentee ballot to vote in the November election in Tennessee specifically. So I want to highlight that. So any Tennesseans on the call who are going to vote by mail, do that today. Um, we are really proud at Civic Tennessee that our partners are extremely engaged in the Civic Holidays. And from National Voter Registration Day through Election Hero Day and National Voter Education Week and Vote Early Day in between, all of our partners are thinking right now and have been thinking for quite some time about what their engagement is going to look like. And what we love about our partners is that they're really focused on developing celebration with intentionality and ensuring that they are best serving their communities for their organizations. So, for example, one of our partner organizations is the American Muslim Advisory Council. And every election that we have in Tennessee during early voting, they host what they call a Muslim Vote Day, where it's a statewide coordinated effort where they have social activations, parties at the polls, rides to the polls, all coordinated on one particular day during early voting to get out the vote and to really serve their particular communities. So between providing those rides, offering spaces for celebration, making sure that there's someone that they can reach out to if they have any questions about their voting rights or about who and what's on the ballot. There's always a way that they'll be able to get in touch with somebody that is connected to the community that they are a part of and that they identify with, and to ensure that they have the best voting experience possible. I also want to highlight that another organization in Tennessee, API Middle Tennessee, does something very similar and has done that for the past couple of elections, and we'll be bringing that back in November. One thing that we're also really excited about, in particular around National Voter Registration Day, is we had a group of restaurants in Nashville reach out to us and say, hey, we want to do some activations around voter registration before our voter registration deadline. So we met with this group of restaurants and we've put together with them what we're calling the Promote the Vote Tour. And so every week in Nashville, there will be a happy hour where folks can come by and register to vote, update their voter information, whether it's in Tennessee or in another state, because we have a lot of people coming from out of town. We want to make sure that anyone who comes by has the support that they need. And they're also going to be writing postcards to themselves so that when we get closer to election day, we're going to mail them a postcard at the start of early voting so that they get a reminder from their own selves with a message in the future about the importance of them casting their ballot. And so we're really excited that these are a number of the different ways that our partners are going to be activating on the ground. and are going to be empowering voters. We know that there's so much more out there, but those are just a couple of ways that our partners are building energy and excitement in the form of celebration. So thank you for having me, and I'll hang around if there are questions later on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen, and to you, Maddie, for giving us a little insight into how in-person celebrations work on the ground for both of your organizations. Next, we'll jump into a few more kind of best practices for building up an in-person activation, just like the ones you heard. Again, my name is Millen. I'm from Vote Early Day. I'm going to speak a little bit about a couple of the resources we have available for anyone here on this call or anyone putting together an in-person celebration. And then we'll hear from the Center for Artistic Activism with a couple more details and resources on how to make the most of your plans. So the very first thing we kind of ask all of our partners to do when they are first putting pen to paper on creating an in-person celebration is to start with a plan, especially for large-scale celebrations, but even for, small coordinated efforts. We definitely want folks to spend a little bit of time before jumping into all the fun and games to spend some time identifying critical pieces to their larger plan. And so you can see on the slide here, that's just a quick preview of the kind of planning guide that is available on Vote Early Day's website in our partner toolkit. And a few of the broad pieces that it has as part of that guide are identifying three big things. One would be the goals of your event, something to keep you centered and on track as you build out the rest of your plan, and then, of course, get to the day of your celebration. The second would be to identify potential partners and audiences, and that, like you just heard, in-person celebrations are even more impactful and possible when you're coordinating with as part of a larger coalition. And so I think we heard from both of our partner speakers just now about kind of the role that other folks can play in building your celebration. And so you definitely want to spend some time as part of your planning to identify those potential groups. You also want to spend some time identifying audiences. I think a lot of our efforts are geared specifically towards voters and potential voters. But you might want to spend some time thinking about other folks who you could target to be not just host your event with you, but attend your event and give it a little bit more daylight as well. And that means for Vote Early Day, one of the resources we have available to folks is communication that helps them reach out to their local election official. If you're putting a democracy related or civic engagement related event together and you want to get it on the radar of your local election administrators, of your statewide election administrators, just spending some time thinking about the other kind of stakeholders that could get involved and make your celebration, again, even more impactful. And then the third thing that's part of any key plan is creating a timeline and a checklist for all of the steps that you've just mapped out. Again, the Vote Early Day Partner Toolkit has a planning guide that you can see the first sheet of there. But really, any kind of guide where you're planning out these major components to your celebration is key to ensuring that you follow your timeline and accomplish every step of the way. And then another quick note on kind of communicating when you're building an in-person celebration is to keep your audience in mind and specifically tailor all of your communications to them. And so, again, if you're building an event that's dedicated to interacting and engaging with voters, make sure you have an FAQ section, some time dedicated to preparing for those, expected questions that they might have. If this is a registration-centered event, making sure you have the resources available for them to get registered, but also take answers back home to them if there are family members who need to be registered and aren't able to make it to the event. For us as Vote Early Day, we definitely want our partners to know their local and state kind of early voting guidelines, and that means knowing the closest polling place to your celebration. That means knowing when your early voting period ends, because that also varies by locality. So just spending some time as you're building your event, thinking of the questions on behalf of your audience is a key step. And then also when you're communicating with press, one thing that we found is to build specific hooks and calls to action into your kind of press requests. When you're asking, especially in this kind of civic season and around GOTV time, when you're asking press to kind of engage and show some love to your event, you definitely want to give them specific highlights of the event to come or specific highlights of the event if it just happened. Either way, you definitely want to be tailoring your message exactly to the specific reporter. And that means one-on-one messages specifically to a reporter or to an organization and avoiding kind of mass emails that go out to everybody on the local contact list. And then for volunteers, again, similar note, but direct personal contact is the best way to recruit people to help lend a hand for your event. Again, like we heard with both of our previous partners, takes a village to put together a super successful in-person celebration. But when you have volunteers committed to helping, that process goes a lot more smoothly. And so make sure you're putting in the time and the thought into communicating with volunteers and using that kind of direct contact and networking within your own contacts to bring on volunteers to make that in-person celebration a reality. Those were just a few different tips and tricks from Vote Early Day. I'm going to throw it over to Crystal from the Center for Artistic Activism to share a little bit about what's worked for them in the past.
Thank you so much. That was so great. My name is Crystal Barrett. I am the programs coordinator at the Center for Artistic Activism, and I'm joined by Rachel and Alexia, who will talk in a moment. But the Center for Artistic Activism, we are a nonprofit. We've been around since 2009, and we help other social justice and voting orgs bring more creativity and innovation to the work that they're doing. And we do that through trainings, research, and a lot of different resources, some of which we'll share today. And we're part of a much larger group that really is working all over the nation and all over the world. And today we're going to talk about going from tabling to, tabling yawn, to tabling. And so, oh, the slides are getting ahead of us, but that's okay. So we're gonna thank you. We're gonna hear from Alexia Kemmering, and she is one of our Unstoppable Voters fellows this year at the Center for Artistic Activism, and she works for the American Association of People with Disabilities. And I'm gonna hand it over to her now to talk about a creative action she did just a few weeks ago. And hopefully this will inspire y'all. I think it will.
Hey everyone, this is Alexia. Thanks for having us on. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background on our project, which is called Building Accessible Democracy Allies. And on this slide, you can see a picture of two people wearing superhero capes that say Champion of Accessibility, Guardian of Democracy, Accessible Democracy Ally. And someone holding a sign that says Kapow, the accessible entrance emerges. And behind them is a backdrop of a comic book style page. And so someone early in this presentation alluded to the importance of goals. I think the same is true for tabling. If you're going to be at an event, you need a goal for what your event is. Our broader goal was getting local election officials and poll workers in Virginia to recognize and prioritize accessibility at the polling places during the 2024 general election. So we're a national organization, but we do state and local work. And for this project, we worked in Virginia. So as stated, our audience is really poll workers and election officials. Many of you may or may not know, but for voters with disabilities, there are a lot of barriers to being able to vote. It's not as simple as just getting our folks out and engaged. We also have to make sure that they can actually participate in democracy once they are registered and engaged. And polling place inaccessibility is a big barrier. And some of the people that have the power to really shift that are poll workers and election officials, but they have a lot of responsibility. They're going through a lot of training, and they often feel overwhelmed when you try to add anything else to their plate or give them feedback, which is totally understandable. And so we came up with this project with the help of Center for Artistic Activism. So our strategies were really to create a culture of fame over shame around accessibility. So rather than pointing out ways that poll workers create barriers or ways that election officials have failed to make election day accessible in the past, we wanted to create a real desire to take part in building an accessible democracy. So we wanted poll workers to feel inspired, celebrated, and supported after engaging with our table. And we wanted them ultimately to believe that creating accessibility on election day is both important and possible. So tabling can often be a really passive activity, right? Like you're standing or sitting there waiting for people to come up to you. And even though our booth was very different than the others around us because we had a big, colorful comic book backdrop, that wasn't enough for us. We wanted to create more intrigue. So we made printouts, which you can see on the left here, and we put them on every table in this conference, which, sorry, I should back up. We did this table at a full day election training for poll workers and election officials in Virginia. And we put little flyers on all the tables that said, in a world where every vote counts, who will emerge to protect democracy and safeguard accessibility? Come find the comic book table. And then we also put 2 signs that looked like comic book speech bubbles around the conference to kind of try to guide people toward our table. So they again say, in a world where every vote counts, a hero emerges to champion accessibility. And then we also captured interest by the main piece at our table is we created a mini comic book about polling place accessibility. And so we got people to engage with us by not saying, do you want to learn about accessibility at polling places, which would maybe make them feel overwhelmed, but instead kind of tricking them by saying, do you want to see a fun comic book? And so this shows a couple of more pictures of our comic book and people looking at it. And then we also had a tactile map of an accessible polling place layout. So people who are blind or low vision could use touch to explore the different aspects. And we really walked people through them and we made it very fun, exciting, engaging. And this is obviously kind of different materials than you might normally see at a tabling. And then our other strategy was to maintain conversation, but in a fun way. So you can see 2 photos here of people interacting with a large, colorful spin the wheel. So after we showed them their comic book, we invited them to spin the wheel. And then whatever they landed on was a scenario about being a voter with a disability or polling place accessibility or a question related to the 2, which we asked them and sort of engaged in conversation about. And then at the end of that interaction, they got to have their very own Accessible Democracy Ally pin. And this slide shows a picture of someone putting on the Accessible Democracy Ally pin, which were very special enamel pins that looked like the comic book. And then we invited them to celebrate their new status as Accessible Democracy Allies by posing for photos with some of our cutout signs in front of the backdrop. And I'll also name here, we really went hard on celebrating when people became allies, cheering, clapping, and that attracted a lot of people to come see what our booth was about as well. And I'll pass it to Rachel.
Yeah. So just to pull out some tips that you can apply, and some of these are things that have already come up today, so us repeating them just means they're so important. You have to be really clear on your goals and your objectives. Alexia had a super specific objective, even just for this tabling event. You want to really identify your audiences and create for them in mind. So and the next part ties into if you want to articulate what you want your audience to think, feel, and do. So like Alexia really thought about the poll workers and wanted to celebrate them as opposed to shame them into not doing the right thing. She wanted them to feel celebrated so that they would do the right thing. And she created an action that would do that. Other things we've seen that really work kind of across the board is to think of a spectacular way to take up space. I think often we might think of like the width and the depth, but height is so good at getting attention and making people intrigued, like that photo banner that Alexia had, which she bought for very cheap, I know, like got so much more interest from people. You also want to let people engage in multiple different ways. So like some people had time just to take the comic book and go. Others had time to spin the wheel. Some had time to take a photo. Like it was nice that we had all those different ways that people could take part. We want to make participation meaningful and responsive. So that when they're doing something, they really feel like there's a reason. And so like when they would spin that wheel, we would all watch, we were all really invested, and we all wanted them to do well in that quiz part of the event. And to keep things really surprising and real, you don't go to a voting election conference thinking you're gonna be able to be a superhero, and that surprise can really draw people in. And as you're planning your own actions, some questions you can ask yourself to help get you towards events like these are: how can you make your work more attractive and welcoming, more relatable to your audiences, more interactive and participatory, and more welcoming and fun for your audiences and also for you and your volunteers? It certainly helped that we were doing something fun and that the volunteers we were working with like wanted to be there. And we have a whole toolkit with more tips and more exercises to help you plan actions like these. And so, yeah, Crystal just put that in the chat and you can download that. And if you ever want to talk to us about your ideas, we have our email addresses on the next slide, and feel free to reach out. Thanks. And now I'm going to pass it along to Ro to talk about being an election hero.
Awesome. Well, let's give a big shout out, appreciation, claps, reactions, heart to all of the amazing partners who just presented. Honestly, from the Civic Holidays team to you all and to everyone listening, we could not do it without you guys and everyone's such amazing tips and tricks and activations. We are so thankful to be in partnership with you all, and I just really want to share that from the Civic Holidays to you all. Thank you so much. Well, hi everyone. My name is Rohini Nambiar. I go by Ro, and I'm the program manager for Election Hero Day, which is the final Civic Holiday in our 4 event lineup. And I'm going to talk a little bit about specific ways to celebrate from each Civic Holiday. Awesome. So for NVRD National Voter Registration Day, some ideas that the team has shared is organize a voter registration block party with music, fun, costumes, and food. We want to attract a lot of folks to come and make sure and double check their voter registration and just register to vote in general and meet people where they're at. I think that's an amazing tip. Set up voter reg tables at malls, farmers markets, at colleges or high schools. Really focus on ways to get people involved in their day-to-day activations that they do just in general. For a National Voter Education Week, which is the next Civic Holiday, work with the college to visit classrooms and help students make a plan to vote. A lot of NVU's activations happen on campuses and in schools, which is the amazing way of meeting people where they're at. We love that. And host a candidate forum or debate watch party. Get people involved in what's going on in the media, what's going on in the news. How do we want to educate our chapters and our people that are activating? And for Vote Early Day, organize a party at the polls, similar to what we were just talking about with National Voter Registration Day and National Voter Education Week. How are we getting people excited? How are we bringing back joy to voting and to civic engagement? Also put on a community barbecue potluck, picnic at the polls. Love that idea. I think that is amazing. A lot of people know that free food entices all, so that's an amazing way to get folks activated. And then finally, host a concert, talent show, art exhibition, really get people involved and make sure that they feel like this is part of their November culture, their civic culture, and how, as Americans, we show up to the polls. And finally, for Election Hero Day, we are super excited at Election Hero Day to be piloting in-person activations for the first year ever. So we're extremely excited to really get out and organize Thank You Election Hero postcard drives, deliver flowers, snacks, pizza to your local election office, and make these heroes feel incredibly get that motivation and gratitude out to them on the busiest day of their careers. So with that, I'm gonna share one last thing, and I think this is a really important and key thing before we dive into Q&A, is the possibilities are endless. You know your community and you know your community members best. These are amazing ideas that we're giving to you for, it's a menu of options, I'd like to say, but that doesn't mean that you need to stick to them. There are so many people, so many chapters and partners on the ground that are doing the work and are working with the community members, and we know that you know what's best. So feel free to always make a unique option for activations. Like I said, you know your people the best. And as the Civic Holidays, we'll support and uplift your work. Okay, and with that, I think we can move into Q&A. I'm gonna take a look at the questions. Cheyenne, I know you marked a few that you are gonna take a stab at and answer live. So I'll pass it right back to you.
Sounds good. So thank you guys for dropping in your questions into the chat, into the Q&A box. Some of these I've answered privately, but I also wanted to push them up to the live so that we can answer them as a group. And if you have any others, continue to drop them in. So I have a question. Can we have a copy of this wonderful PowerPoint to share with our students? Absolutely. That PowerPoint is coming your way along with the recording of the presentation. So thank you for asking that question. To the next question, Jada, she said, where can we share events that we are hosting with this group? We are in Texas and would love to invite any other Texas groups to join. So I will actually throw that out to the Civic Holidays. In terms of sharing events, I think from a National Voter Registration Day perspective, your best plan is probably to share on social media, and you can use the Vote Ready hashtag for like NVRD events. But for Civic Holidays, if you are doing some like big activations across all of the Civic Holidays, you can use the Civic Holidays hashtag, and we'll see them on social media. We can grab them and then we can like repost and share them across our platform as well. So I think that might be your best bet. But if you have any other ideas that you'd like us to help you amplify them, please use the hashtag so that we can see them on social and we can pass them along. Thank you, Jada. A question from Sherry. Sherry asks, do you provide any education on where the candidates stand on issues such as guides.vote? That is a great question. We're actually planning to do some sort of like candidate forum, but the League of Women Voters has a great resource that I'd rather direct you guys to. They have chapters all over the country and they're doing some really cool candidate work, including a candidate guide, I believe. So I would say that's your better option. But if any of the Civic Holidays want to jump in there, feel free.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My section hasn't come up yet, so I'll also introduce myself. Eddie Zerbi, he, him. I'm with the National Voter Education Week team. But I think this question, so this is like a huge question that we get a lot. This, in our opinion, is something that is really, really important to provide to people throughout National Voter Education Week, because it really helps address a lot of like psychological barriers that people may have when it comes to voting, specifically like them not thinking that they know enough about the candidates. Or them not knowing enough about, or like them not thinking that like candidates are really trying to appeal to like their own needs or interests, right? And how to like make that connection. So on our website, so an entire day of National Voter Education Week is dedicated to making it really easy to find out about what is on a voter's ballot, either through looking up sample ballots or using tools like guides.vote, Vote 411, and Ballot Ready as well, to find nonpartisan and trusted information that is like easily digestible, easily read, and can help voters really help make a decision about what they're going to be voting on this year. So on the National Voter Education Week website, we've got a lot of frequently asked questions related to like how to find out more information about what's on your ballot. We feature a couple of different tools. We have our own tool as well that you can use, that voters can use to look up their ballot. Yeah, we also have a bunch of like sample social media materials and everything to make it really easy to get that information in front of voters in your community.
Awesome. Eddie, thank you so much for adding that. That's really a helpful resource, a group of helpful resources, actually. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. This is actually a question for one of our partners who have hosted events before, Civic Tennessee. So Warren asks, how do you initiate the conversations for promoting the vote with local restaurants?
That's a great question, and I'm going to broaden it more widely to local businesses too. In this particular case, what we're doing with this Nashville restaurant promote the vote tour, we had a group of restaurants reach out to us and say, "Hey, we wanted to do this, but we aren't experts at voter engagement, so we'd love to partner with you to bring in your expertise and help provide the support that our customers need in order to make sure that they're ready to activate around the upcoming election." The benefit of this is that they get to do what they do best, which is provide a good service to their customers, and we get to help make sure that their customers are getting the most out of their experience right there and then. In terms of reaching out to restaurants and other local businesses, I think depending on the place, there's going to be different levels of interest. Some might really be invested and want to have their staff trained to be able to provide this information to their customers and to make information available at their restaurant all the time, whether it be in a window, at the register, at the table, whatever it might be. And then there are some that just want you to come through one time and one time only. So really taking the time to, go door to door, reach out to the hot spots locally and say, "Hey, would you be interested in making sure that your customers are civically engaged and ready to vote in the November 5th election? And let's figure out how you want to be activated around that. We don't have to decide for you. We can decide what that looks like together." A really good example in Memphis, in West Tennessee, we had an organization that went literally door to door on multiple streets, went to every business on the block and said, "Hey, we're trying to make sure that people are getting the information that they need. How can we make sure that you're providing this information to your customers?" Some say just leave a stack of pamphlets or palm cards by the register and call it a day. And others are like, "I want to make sure my whole team is registered to vote, and I want to make sure that we've got this information year round here." So again, it all can open up opportunities that you might otherwise have never imagined before. So take advantage of it, go for it, and see what happens.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you so much. That's great advice. We also received a couple of other questions that we'll try to get to here that might be directed towards you. So we will pause those for now and come back to them if we have some time. Okay, so for the next question, I have one from Savannah. Do similar toolkits like the Vote Early Day one exist for the other holidays? They absolutely do. We have toolkits for each of the civic holidays. The National Voter Registration Day website, you can access it through the Civic Holidays website, but we have a whole rollout of toolkits that are beginning. And Ro just dropped a few as well that you guys should be able to see for National Voter Education Week. And then Election Hero Day is finalizing their toolkit as well. So this is toolkit season for all of us. We have the social media toolkit that will be available, I think, starting this week or next week. But we also have a communications toolkit for National Voter Registration Day and a field toolkit. So feel free to look through all of our websites and see all of those resources, or you can go to civicholidays.org website to access all of them all at once. Great question. Thank you. So for the next question, I will go to, oh, we have so many good ones. Please keep them coming. These are great. Drop them into the Q&A box. Again, this webinar will be recorded, so we'll share it out after, but continue to ask your questions now because this is a great time to do so. Just drop them into the Q&A box. Here's a question from an anonymous attendee. Do you have tips for how you can talk about social issues while keeping it nonpartisan? Yeah, this is a big one. Many issues that affect my org's population are inherently partisan just because of the political climate. So how do you keep this nonpartisan? Can I throw it to one of our civic holidays for some alternate perspective on like how to speak to this and what's the best approach? Anybody wants to take it? Okay, so I'll jump in then. Or Eddie, go ahead.
Well, we can kick it off real quick. This is actually going to probably be a training that we do later in August as well. Because there's so many questions about this, and we know that so many partners with the Civic Holidays, this might be some of the first time that you all are doing like voter registration or voter education work. Um, a couple of tips that we really focus on for folks is I mean, at the very least, like you really cannot do any sort of like partisan, like mention anything partisan at all, right? So in terms of like you cannot be representing a party, you cannot be asking people for like their party affiliation and only registering certain people to vote or like certain or only engaging certain people. If you're doing like a candidate forum or a candidate watch part or like a debate watch party or something like that, you know, you need to be really careful about inviting all participants. You need to be very careful about how you're featuring different candidates, stuff like that. And a lot of those details you can find more information on all of our websites, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, right now, essentially, yeah, it's really focusing on like local issues, I think is one of the biggest things that we like to emphasize through National Voter Education Week. So not just focusing on things that are maybe like top of the ticket and can be very divisive, but also educating people about local issue, like local races that are coming on and how they might impact people's everyday lives, and are a lot less divisive. That I think can be something that really helps to like break down conversations and like helps people open up beyond like maybe partisan beliefs that they're entering the conversation with. But I'm sure others, I mean, this is a question that we all get, and like all parts of the voter process kind of deal with different parts. So I'm sure others have different advice there.
Eddie, I thought that was great advice, and that definitely encapsulates how we approach nonpartisan conversations with National Voter Registration Day as well. So thank you for that. Awesome. I have a question actually that is for Vote Early Day. So, a question from Betty. We are a vote by mail state with no polling places. Any ideas on how we can do an event like this with most of our voters mailing their ballots to us?
Yeah, that's a great question, and just one sign of how I think early voting rules can vary from place to place. And so I think even with a majority kind of mail-in ballot system or ballot preference for most of the electorate, there's definitely ways to make the act of learning your ballot, casting your ballot more of a kind of social and inviting, engaging activity. Something that we've seen work for partners in the past and even individuals has been hosting like mail your ballot kind of dinner party. And so creating some kind of communal event for people to come by to, again, bring food, bring fun and games, expect and have a cheery, like engaging atmosphere. And then one of the kind of activities of the night can be the process of helping everybody, whether they're first-time voters, regular voters, go through their ballot and just ensure that, you know, we're all setting aside some time to do that, even if we're doing it privately, doing it together with, you know, our friends and family. And so no matter the actual like logistics of how you cast your ballot, just creating inviting and welcoming celebrations to do it together with your friends and family is something you can do even with a kind of mail-in system if that's what takes up the most time in your state.
Great. Awesome answer. Well, thank you guys so much for these amazing questions that have come through in the chat. I see Ro is answering one more, so we'll try to get to them before we wrap up. But thank you all so much for attending this webinar. As a reminder, you can go to the civicholidays.org website to sign up for all 4 Civic Holidays in one easy swoop. National Voter Registration Day kicks it off on September 17th, and many of you are already signed up to be community partners, so thank you guys so much. And use the Civic Holidays website to sign up for all 4. We will absolutely share this recording and the training with you, the deck with you after the presentation. But we want to thank you all for the tremendous work that you guys are doing in your state. insights. We are so well represented across all of the folks that have signed up for this webinar, but also are dropping their questions and saying their hellos in the chat. So thank you guys so much for committing to this work and being devoted to it. We really appreciate it, and it cannot happen without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And to the Civic Holidays, thank you all for presenting and for sharing your insights on the best ways to be a part of the Civic Holidays and to be involved. So we are wrapping up here, but we will see you in just a few short weeks, and we will be in touch with you. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions and sign up on the civicholidays.org website. Thank you all so very much, and to the Civic Holidays we go. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.